Hello and welcome to Wonkette's weekly live chat. That is definitely live and in person. Um, I am Robyn Pennacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. Um,
Hello,
who
Robyn.
apparently
How are you?
I'm swell. How are you?
I am good. Your surroundings have changed.
Yes, I am back in Rochester for a couple weeks, so I'm back in the green room. Uh,
Yes, for those who've watched these for a while, Robyn had started in the green room. It's a lovely.
yes.
It's lovely. So I thought we'd start today, Robyn. You had written about Friday
Oh,
when
I
we're
thought you were going
recording
to start by talking shit about my outfit.
this. I was literally joking.
Oh,
Before
okay.
this, I said that we should discuss what you're wearing. I really like it.
Thank you.
It's very it fits for the green room and for the larger theme. So, but yes, I you were writing the Federalist, this guy who's not some necessarily a crackpot, like an actual person who's appeared on Fox News multiple
Yeah.
times, sort of basically proposing, and I don't like to lean on the term final solution, but scarily kind of similar of
I mean, he
we
literally
need
said
to
the transgender question, so which is, somewhat reminiscent of some other terminology that we have heard about
Yeah,
a
when the
100 years
question is
ago.
the existence of another group of people, like what's the question? Like what it is yeah, so can you just very quickly for people who didn't, and you should have read Robin's article, but if you haven't, can you just sum up like what his theory is?
Oh,
I thought you tied it up well with the whole Bill Maher thing that he had said that I found annoying, but
it was very annoying. Um, the gist of it is basically that he believes that Republicans or conservatives or people who are calling themselves conservatives now need to start doing full fascism to the rest of us because the left will only be stopped when we stop them, which is terrifying as a saying. And it's a saying that I've actually heard before on a lot of like the far right websites and, even on like Reddit and stuff like that. Basically, he wants to force everyone to convert to Christianity, bar people from getting divorced, uh, bar people from being transgender, bar children from being transgender, bar like send parents to jail for letting their kids go to drag queen story time. Like basically he wants like the government to enforce his personal values and to stop the people he finds personally annoying from doing things that annoy him.
yeah, so that's fascism. We've seen different terms for it used, like white Christian nationalism and yeah, this specific type of world that these people want. What is exhausting is it just seems like every election Democrats come out and I will see things of like, oh, it's wonderful, thank God for people of color, especially black women, and we're kind of like, as a black person, I'm just exhausted of trying to obviously, and I get a lot of not all white people in this, but obviously a overwhelming majority of white people want a fascist state.
Yes.
And we've seen things, it's mostly from the right, like talking about national divorce or whatever. But at a certain point, you're kind of like, this is not a healthy, like what that guy wrote was literally like an abusive spouse. Like, if you misbehave, I'm going to hurt you more. And the only solution, there's no voting or counseling, that nothing. The only solution is to get out of this relationship. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
that will make it better with someone like that. Like, they want to destroy it. And I'm not trying to make light of women in abusive relationships, but I feel like I've known
Well, no,
that
even Mars
that's the pattern. They say leave.
thing that he said was basically like, you know, they wouldn't have to hit you if you didn't keep mouthing off, which is, another, like, that's really like what it is. Like, you're being too mouthy, and what are they going to do? Not hit you?
We have to show
Not
how
elect
much
crazy people?
we dislike you, which is very sort of super villain. type
Yeah.
stuff. Like I used to love it as a comic book reader when they would have like the villain of the Red Skull or Doctor Doom recount his past adventures, and it's just like, I was just trying to do this, and then Superman came and was mean to me and whatever. Like, it's all from like, well, no, you tried to destroy. He was hanging out with he wanted to have a long weekend with Lois Lane, and you tried to destroy the world, and he
Yeah.
stopped you. It's like, but in his own mind, it's like always like a sense of, I am being persecuted by these people. And what's strange about what Mars says is just none of this is all false equivalency. Like, the worst excesses of liberalism, because people can be silly, and it's often amongst a very small group. These aren't, it's like just sort of saying, oh, we need to nominate Louis Farrakhan on the Democratic side because I read this article about the Klan showing up somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, these are all minor, but that's what Fox News does. They go through and find every small minor incident to justify this hatred and contempt that people have, often of people they don't know or interact
Mhm.
with, so they are inclined to believe the worst about them. But like with Mars, like, what are you talking about? What more? Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. Chuck Schumer, the nice, old Jewish
Yeah.
guy, is the leader. We picked Biden. I feel like if that's not your radicalizing moment for Democrats, is to be like, okay, well, we won't scare you with Liz Warren or even Kamala because she's black. It's gonna be
So we'll give
Joe
you a nice
Biden.
white old guy.
He's not scary. He's been in office for 50 years. He's whatever. And instead, they try to overturn that election, not Castro's, right? Or even Obama.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine there's a scenario which no one considered at the time because we were somewhat naive in 2008 for a lot of people, of like, but that's what you would imagine, a bunch of white supremacists trying to break down the Capitol at the idea of this
Yeah.
black person becoming, but no, it's Biden.
Yeah.
And then, now they travel the country like Lauren Boebert, and their slogan is "Let's go, Brandon," for, a way of
Fuck you,
saying
Biden, because they think they're like, that is so sad that that's like their big clever joke that they've had for like a year and a half.
they want
Like,
to persecute various elderly people. So Nancy Pelosi's 80, to Biden's going to be 80, and then Fauci's in his 80s, and they want to, you know, persecute him. I was like, you can't even retire. We're coming for you. I've seen that from multiple Republicans.
yeah.
Upon this whole premise of, they blame everything that happened, and this is classic fascism as well, right? They
Mhm.
blame everything that went wrong in 2020 upon him when it was really their leader. But they can't, and I think that makes it even more so why they hate Fauci, because they need to channel, they can't direct it towards their Lord and
Yeah.
Master. It has to be directed towards Fauci, who's just a guy. There was never, he could not force any governor, he could not force the president, certainly, to close down anything, to make any change, to shut down the
Yeah.
schools or whatever. He had no power. At most, he said, here's the data, here's why we should do some. He made recommendations which can be ignored. Like,
Yeah.
presidents ignore stuff all the time, but they just tried to make this retroactively that he inflicted this. And whenever you see this, I just feel like, whenever people see this, when they're talking about what Fauci did to the nation, that's
Yeah.
deranged, right? Like,
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
fascism.
Because they just want someone to be to blame, someone to be mad at, and they really do love, like, they love a scapegoat. They love someone that they can just be like, this person is responsible for all of my problems. Like, like, that's literally all libs of TikTok is. It's like they find like random weirdos on TikTok and are like, this random person is to blame for all of your problems. They're weird. Look at them. Oh my God. Like, it's very, very bizarre. Like, they just,
It's like the Minutes of Hate from
yeah.
1984. Like, it's all textbook, but then they're the ones who like to say, no, no, no. 1984 is when you're claiming that a trans man can have a baby. like whenever you're
Which,
making me
like,
believe something
factually
that's
they
not.
can. Like, they have ovaries.
Yeah, they freaked out. Someone else, and I saw and Ted Cruz promoting it. It's a sitting U.S. senator, which again, a civilian, a citizen
Hmm.
who's trans, was pregnant, was going to be leaving. It was mostly like kids might have questions about this, but they just presented of like, how dare you even? It's like, well, what are you upset about? You also don't believe this person's a man, so why is it so horrifying that this person that you don't believe is a man, just someone with a beard, is having a child and telling their kids about it? But it's just so scary. So it goes back to this idea of like, how long can we, as minorities, myself, like, fight this? Like, look, I mean, it's 60% it's of a population still, it's just overtly supportive of fascism, like not
Hmm.
polite Romney country club stuff, like the worst of
And no one will
Donald
ever
Trump.
say, is the right going too far?
No, it's upon us.
Yeah.
We promoted them. We made them do this by existing, even though, as you said, half of this stuff is imaginary. Robyn had written a piece. I might do something where if there are pieces Robyn has written or I've written, I might drop them in the comments or in the box so people could find them. So I'm not just alluding to stuff randomly. But you'd written about how this stuff is imaginary, and so they make up stuff to get people upset about, and then like believe that this is what justifies
Yeah.
fascism.
Yeah. And these like crazy laws that they want to enact. Like, that is what they are doing. They're like, oh my God, these people are crazy. So we need these laws to, you know, do God knows what. We need, we have to crack down on this, or else they're going to just, I don't know, go crazy.
Well,
Like,
it's so, and it's so
like,
one-sided. To the, I mean, a lot of the quote unquote good Republicans, they're kind of like, God forbid, because their party went crazy, they lose. For one, they want it to be like, well, I want to do the right thing, but when? So I voted for Biden over Trump, who's a fascist, but gee, Biden's trying to do democratic stuff. That's not fair. And I was like, okay, well, all
that's
right.
divisive.
It's like, well, why don't we just nominate the like Flavor Flav or something, like the most
Yeah.
extreme, or that, Iran, like, why don't we just, so, oh well, this is who
Yeah.
we have and it's democracy's at stake, so I guess
He's
you're gonna
really
have
nice though. Like, he's not like, I wouldn't say he's Donald Trump. Like, he's basically a nice guy. I watched Flavor of Love. Like,
no, it is a reference to a Chris Rock line of when people were shocked that Black people were voting for Obama, and he was like, well, it's not like it's for Flav, it's like he's qualified. It's not like Black people do not actually go to this idea of cult of personality as much as people sort of think. I mean, it was like Obama's actually pretty impressive in many ways. It's not
yes,
just
well,
that
yes,
he's a Black
obviously.
guy. But whereas in a, like, I could not go down the street. It would be so embarrassing if Herschel Walker were a Democrat and was close to winning, and he had like 98% Black support, despite him being barely coherent. It would be so embarrassing. There would be lectures. There would be like, what's wrong with the Black race? What are they?
They'd be
What's going
blaming
on?
it on baggy pants. They'd be like,
But you instead you just have it's hilarious because it's like he's like he's a transformative leader. He's born like these politicians, like Lindsey Graham and Roger Marshall, and was also saying that, like, he's just he's a wonderful guy. Like, these are clearly like, you're either lying or delusional. Like, he's not impressive in any way. It's
yeah,
just
no.
sort of, it's kind of like if you are dating someone who's really fundamentally embarrassing, there might be only one reason you're dating them, and you bring them around your friends, and your friends are like, do whatever you want, but don't try to tell me this is like magic or love.
Yeah,
Like, like what are you doing? Like, this is your business, but don't try to sell us.
yeah.
So Yeah, so he's
I mean, it
but
could be one of his other personalities that they like better, and we don't know that personality, so we can't judge because he's got 12. He's like civil.
yes, he's an incredibly violent, well, what's fascinating is that he, well, when you recall the OJ Simpson trial and all of that had occurred, whereas up to before that happened, OJ was someone who would have been a likely running as a
Oh yeah,
Republican type, nice black athlete candidate. And so he's sort of like aside from obviously the murder, he's
yeah,
like,
that
whereas
we know of.
that it's sort of the Herschel, who knows?
Have
I
we
mean, they
measured his
believe,
hands?
well, Republicans morally believe he committed because abortion they believe is murder. So he
Yeah.
committed a contract killing. They're just saying it didn't happen despite all evidence. So he's just like, some every black person had at least one unfortunate sports addicted uncle who was just like, I know OJ. Like, no, you don't. You don't know this man, but fine. He couldn't have done this. Yes, he did. I mean, it's all evident. I know what you want from me. Yes, he did. But he's like, look, I'm happy to see a brother get off. This system is effed up. So it's our turn. I remember
Yeah.
a white writer was like crying at the time saying, this OJ trial was the moment I realized the system sometimes doesn't work. Oh, that's when, like, not Emmett Till, Scottsboro Boys, any
Oh my
number,
God.
but just when one rich guy got
Yeah.
off on a circumstantial trial against the most incompetent, and Alan Dershowitz got all the celebrity treatment for getting Klaus Van Bülow off for
Yeah.
killing his wife, but Johnny Cochran is just some sort of scuzzbag lawyer. As opposed, he's never presented as having actually outmaneuvered a very incompetent prosecution. But beyond that, I mean, I feel like I always get those OJ vibes with Herschel Walker, where he's just someone of like, they are completely not like, it's right there. I don't know if you saw, there was a recent interview where he's got his glasses, it's his sort of middle-aged man glasses, and someone hands him a copy of the check, and he's like, well, I might have sent her a check for $700, but how did I know how she spent it? He writes checks for people, Robyn. Like, how does
Yeah.
he?
He didn't write for abortion in the little at the bottom. Yeah. I forget what paper checks look like, but there's that little thing at the bottom.
The memo.
Yeah,
The
memo.
memo.
Yes. Yes.
If you ever use Venmo, they make you do
Yeah.
the equivalent of that, and it's always frustrating. It's like, I don't want to, because I'm
Because
clicking,
you just always put for sex is really that's
oh, right, because you've got to like be able to like, I am not using it for this purpose. I am, but we've had that dialogue. How can you prove that?
Yeah.
But that actually you had I'd the guy in Arizona who was caught, who's a Republican, who's running for the Maricopa County Board of Governors, Trumpist, believes, of course, the whole groomer thing, that liberals are terrible. Cop caught him in the parking lot near a preschool pleasuring himself because he was so stressed, Robyn, so
Yeah.
stressed after a trip to Home Depot, which is very
To
stressful.
be fair, yeah. It's a stressful place.
So it's huge, right? Like, I don't, if you ever because I do a lot of shopping online.
I spent a really long time trying to find where the light bulb aisle there was one time, and I was about to cry because there were like too many light bulb options, and I didn't know which. It was a bad time. So then I had to go find the closest preschool and just rub one out. No,
What I love is like, there's a whole Richard Pryor routine about the difference between like when black people and white people experience cops. Like when black people come, they pull the gun out. It's like complete, like they're yelling profanities. It's like Cologne, and then like white, it's like spot of trouble, officer. Oh, no, here you go. Cheerio. Like this,
yeah.
all very proper, and that's how it was. The guy's like, you know what you're doing? Oh, you know where you are? Like very nicely, like. As if he was like masturbating on the wrong side of the street. Like there's like Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I should be right over here. I didn't see the sign. It's like, yes, can you finish this up in another 5 minutes? You'll be past your you've got a window where you can do this. Like but there's a whole
The
dialogue.
reason that they, honestly, I will go to my deathbed believing this. The reason that they're like, all these people are trying to sexually corrupt toddlers is because, they're projecting. They assume that we want what they want. Well, sorry, my dear, no.
No. It was too late to get him off the ballot. There's still a good chance he could probably win as the public masturbator. He if you've lived in New York, you've of course witnessed this, so it's not that shocking. Like at some point it's occurred. It's always a very strange thing. Like, why do you feel the need to do this publicly? I
worked at Afterthoughts and De-icing in Claire's, so that was a whole thing. Like, I shit you not, men would like come into Claire's and jerk off by the airing towers. And Claire's is the one with for little kids. It was terrifying. We had to call the mall security and everything because we weren't supposed to just tell them to leave ourselves because we were 18-year-old girls.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No.
I also firmly believe that all dressing room poopers are Republicans. That is, because you know about that, right?
Dressing room, what
poopers? People who poop in dressing rooms.
Is
this new to you?
Well, it's very new to me, Robyn, because I've not done this. We just want to clarify for the viewers.
Take a shit in dressing rooms and then leave, and no one we just call them pooping bandits, what have you. We'd come with various nicknames for them, but yeah, there are people who just go into dressing rooms and poop, and I am convinced that they are all Republicans because they don't care about the workers. Mm-hmm. A Democrat would be like, I care about the person who has to clean this up. Any liberal, any leftist would be like, I don't want these people to have to clean this up. A Republican wouldn't care. Therefore, all dressing room poopers are Republicans.
Yes. Well, that's why I was disappointed with the protesters who do pour out milk and do whatever, the vegan protesters who go to a grocery store and pour out milk onto the floor. And it's like, okay, well, someone has to clean that up. That's not the best way of communicating your message. Yeah, I mean, I think people get excited about doing things that defy social norms, or it's not just enough to have because he's obviously has a home. He could have gone to his home.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it might have been
it's exhibitionism. It's the fear of getting caught,
and that's more erotic, apparently. Also, he was looking at an entire category, interracial porn specifically, which apparently people in the comments of my article said is an actual separate.
Yes, it is
still. And I was like, but I mean, Hallmark movies aren't separated by. So why is porn so racist?
Well, it's more specifically when it's a black man and a woman. Otherwise, it's not super. It's not, because it's more supposed to be oh no, the white lady is it's super racist. I don't I'm aware of its existence, and I'm aware that it is super racist.
I mean,
I don't really want to get into it.
But people are, I guess, the route but the worst. So we want to say it's the worst things, but that. But that's just. I mean, often many are Republicans because they are very repressed and can't.
Yeah.
Enjoy their own. God forbid the search history for Ted Cruz or someone like that.
I'm sure it's terrifying, because when people are that repressed, that's when they get into weird shit. Ask any dominatrix. And I know many girls who were dominatrixes throughout college, and even now. It's always the freaking square business dudes who are put a cigarette out on my forehead. That's what they're. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of, because if you're that's your like no one you I wouldn't have money for a very expensive New York dominatrix, but I think
Yeah.
if your entire day was spent, like if you're a janitor, like people being crappy to you all day, that's just not as appealing as
Yeah.
but like if you're CEO, it's like, yes, I want a woman to put a collar on me and lead me around. That's like, it's like, okay, well, if that's your kink, why can't you just like give poor people more money
Yeah.
or try?
Well, I mean, that is also a thing. Sort of. There's okay, got like I'm like, where is my dad? Like I'm disgusted. There's a thing called financial domination, which is where like ladies are like, you're the word, you are scum, and then like send me $1,000, and then men do this, and there's actually like they actually have addictions to it and everything. It's a serious thing. Like there are men who've like lost all of this money because they're addicted to that. Actually, Sydney Leathers does that or did that for a while. The Anthony Weiner girl who I actually used to edit when I was at the Frisky. Nice girl. But yeah, that's a whole thing. But like, sadly, it's not just like give money to the poor in general, but that should be a thing. We should invent that fetish. Because if you invent, like Rule 34, if you invent it, it will, if you think of it, it will exist. Like quicksand porn. Mhm. That
you can
exists.
you can swim in quicksand, you know.
Yes, I would actually really like to go in quicksand just because I feel like I would like, want to test my mettle. Because I feel like, we saw so many cartoons back in the day where people were getting caught in quicksand. And I've always thought like I would be so good at getting caught in quicksand because I would know not to struggle and I would just like wait for the branch. I would not be the horse in the never ending story.
Uh, so speaking of someone who is going to be doing okay for herself financially is Liz
Oh
Truss.
yeah. Oh,
The
that's a good transition there.
so her grand opening, grand closing was 44 days as prime minister. She her all she, I mean, as Rebecca, the publisher of Wonkette, noted, it seems sort of weird. She just basically was promoting the Conservative Party's awful policies, and they backfired, and now she's gone. And Boris Johnson might come back. He's like, "Oh, you missed me. I was partying during COVID. Everyone parties now, so come on." I think he's trying to get his job back. But she was there for 44 days. Met the Queen.
Yeah.
And the Queen shortly died. Then met the new king, and now she's gone. And she, as part of, I guess, I don't know, pension
Her
or government.
parting gift
Parting
from the
gift.
show.
129,000 pounds for the
A
rest of
year for life.
for the rest of her life. Not just even that lump sum would be too much
Yeah.
for 44 days. It's almost like she won a contest where
Yeah.
and as part
The
of the contest,
lottery.
you get to meet the Queen and the King, and then you're
And
prime
then you get
minister for 44 days.
$100,000 for life. Yes.
They make you, well, because they make you CEO of a company for a few days. It's like okay, well, you're not going to sign anything important, but you'll sit in the office and
Yeah.
sit in some meetings. It makes you feel like you've won the contest type thing. That's absurd. Hopefully, based on her economic beliefs and what she's asserted and austerity and all that she would not accept this. But yes, that is
Oh, because
a lot.
that'll happen. Yeah.
She'll sort of Ayn Rand it, and so sort of I deserve this, and we'll be fine. There's some poor bastard wrote pushed out a book about her and about her rise to power, celebrating her, that's coming out in December. I guess it's too late to just sort of pulp all the
Oh, that's
copies.
adorable.
44 days. So, like, as we say, who will she regenerate into next? She's like the only prime minister since Doctor Who began in 1963 who was actually never prime minister while a new episode of Doctor Who had aired. Like, she is just like, even Doctor Who has been off the air for a while, it appeared, but like she is just sort of absurdly absurdly like the 44 days of sort of like it's very embarrassing. It's a sort of one of those things where they say, and like, don't put that on your resume because it's very embarrassing if you've only had the job for like 40 days and got fired. But I guess she's gonna have to, because you can't just, people kind of know, so she has to be like.
The unfortunate thing is, like, they don't, like, the actual people of England don't get to vote until like 2025. So the Tories, just from what I can tell, just keep getting do-overs. Like, it's like they're playing like a board game. Like, it's like their child who is cheating at a board game where they're just like, oh wait, no, let me change my card over and over again. Like, oh no, I got this one. I got this one. What about this one?
And people were joking about how bad the British government is, as if American government is a testament of greatness. We're about to have Marjorie Taylor Greene as shadow Speaker of the House, and Italy has its new fascist who people were girl bossing on, of like, but she's young and a woman. It's like, yes, but also fascist.
Yes,
I like young women.
It's not good. I'm not proud of my people here. What about, here's the thing, at least with Italy, we can they can get people out. Like, if you suck, you have to leave. Like, it's not like, no one's waiting for through 4 years for this person to just be like terrible. No, like, if you're terrible, you get kicked out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, unfortunately, sometimes they just keep terrible people in office forever. That is also the option.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
No, it's just sort of flummoxing, especially as if Boris Johnson comes back, as if like, hey, I'm back, would be just sort of hilarious. And he gets to meet the king, so that's fine. That's sort of the it's all great for him. But they've been on this downward spiral since, the Brexit, which is a disaster, and they're still trying to figure out what to do. This is coming up at a time where, really, regardless of what you thought of the royal family, the best thing England really had to go, people kind of respected at least the Queen, right? Their characters are sort of comic book, right? Like, you might have issues with the Queen, but it's like, oh well, Queen Elizabeth is, whatever. But these, it's like Benny Hill characters, right? They're absurd. And the king,
the Queen, Dame Edna, Mrs. Slocum, who knows which one is which?
Well, also
Hyacinth Bouquet.
Harry Potter was a big, that was their new cultural thing. It was like, oh, England gave us Harry Potter, but she, the person who created that's this transphobic bigot. It's very sad. Like, my son reads, I don't know what to do. Like, should I, for every book, my wife and I talk about this, for every book, should we just donate an equal amount to some sort of trans charity or organization or something?
I mean, honestly, that's so tough. The thing is it just sucks, because it sucks all of this enjoyment out of a thing that, kids do love, and that, adult ladies also really love. And there's a whole thing happening downtown in Chicago soon, where there's supposed to be a whole Harry Potter interactive experience. And do you know who would shell out money to go to that under different experiences? Me. I would have gone. I would have been so excited. It's, in Watertower Place.
Yeah, you're not a Disney person, I presume, but
no, I'm totally not a Disney person, but I really like Harry Potter.
But if you were, it was kind of like, he's frozen now or not, if whatever weirdness about Walt Disney, possibly anti-Semitism, and he's dead and gone. He's not actively being terrible. Then it's hard to
and this,
saying it's a small world after all if he's tweeting stuff about the master race, right? It's oh, I feel awkward. But she's actively, so to your point, it's not just sort of look, this is something based.
Yeah.
It's not like a token thing, right? Like, this person's dead, I'm gonna go and enjoy my theme that my fellow people
Yeah.
enjoy this. It's like, well, no, she's gonna get some of this money, right? Am
This
I
is the
like,
thing. I realized that I didn't even feel like the pang of, oh, I wish I could go.
mhm.
Where, like, I think I did with like certain things in the beginning where I was like, oh man, I wish he didn't suck so that like blah blah blah. I did not, like, I still like the movies, I still, like the books and everything, but I don't feel that like, oh no, I can't, I don't know, it's just like that it's
It's just
sort
sort
of
of,
like past
is it just
where I'm
more
like,
that
now she's just
just,
so repulsive that she's put me off.
yeah, it's just sort of soured the whole thing for you.
Yeah, like it ruined it. Like it's not, now it's just like, this wouldn't even be fun.
It just never made sense to me because I feel like, well, there are so many bigots in the world. You don't really need to join the bigot army. Like, there's like that, and they're bigots who that's their
Yeah.
only thing. But like, you could live in, leisure for the rest of your life. You've presented this thing that's good. Just, you don't have to
I mean,
actively
yeah.
use your wealth and power against a marginalized group.
And like last week she literally was like, I'm too rich to care about trans people. Like, yeah, like something was like, I'm a rich person. Why do I have like I can be terrible to all of these people. I don't care. Which is
Yeah, some of that compared
why?
to the
Why would you actively choose to be so terrible?
yeah, I don't get that at all. It's it is just very unfortunate. Uh so but speaking of terrible people, Lauren Bobart, she had been somewhere where she's going on about the end times,
Hmm.
and like this is not, you kind of roll your up. There's a lot. I've had friends of mine who said that there are people who really believe this, right?
Oh
Of like,
no,
okay,
there are.
this is the end times. But that usually the when I talk about revelation, I feel like that's uncomfortable. It feels like you're gonna come at me with an axe. Like, this is really getting intense. It's just sort of scary. Like, what is, you know as an when you're if you were a conservative and you're like, oh, well, their fear of AOC and these others, I've always said, it was sort of imaginary, right? It wasn't rooted in anything
Hmm.
real. I don't know what later, because she wasn't going to take your hamburgers away. She wasn't going to, but even then, she was at the peak of her powers at that
Yeah,
time. It wasn't like, well, she's in the majority and they aren't passing this stuff. She's still in the majority with a Democratic president. They have the trifecta. She does not have Biden's ear. Like, no one in the
yeah,
so-called squad, but like Green, and I cover this, the New York Times, wrote this awful article about her comeback, her triumph of the
yeah,
will, and she is like very powerful. She has the ear
yeah,
of the president, and you always quote these Republicans, these traditionalists, who are just like, well, the president said about making her, maybe Secretary of State or maybe a head of a senior person in the Justice Department, as if it's a joke. It's like, well, no, he'll do that
yeah.
because he's gonna just, if he does get a second term, it'll be filled with like whack jobs like Green, who've proven their loyalty. But
Yeah, exactly. He wants loyalists.
she's powerful. She's like, what's scary? It's like, okay, well, she's this amazing fundraiser, and that just means there are people out there who want what she's selling. Like, that's the American.
Who are also like, the world is ending. The world is ending.
Well, despite her
The end
power
is nigh.
and Bobert's power, there is still, um I've seen like Politico and then Paul Ryan. So Politico said, oh, it's going to come down between Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. It's just, stop. Like, it's so like, imagine existing in this MSNBC world where Republican voters care about what you think they care about.
Yeah.
And no matter how often they tell you, no, we don't. Like, Republicans
I think
try
they're
to
trying to
run.
the secret it. I think they're trying to do the secret, where they're like, this is what Republicans are really into, is like these people who are like fairly milquetoast people of color because they care about that and are like, trying to be
Oh.
hip and with it. Like, really? No, that's where have you
They
been?
don't get the fascism kink. They think of so they tried to run and failed they ran someone against
Yeah.
Green who was essentially a Nikki Haley type. And so I think it's like, I will be just as terrible and supportive of Trump, but I'm not like this. And it's just not enough. It's sort of the idea of saying, well, okay, well, you like sex and orgies, but we're going to have it at this great exclusive club, like Eyes Wide Shut, and there's going to be gowns and it's all formal and there's a password and everything. And the person's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to pull over to the side of the road on my way home from Home Depot and just jerk off. Like, that's where I'm
Yeah.
at. I don't need the crowds or whatever. So that's March of the Green is just like, she's pulling
Yeah.
over the side of the road, and that's
Yeah.
your fascism. It's not like, because Nikki Haley is just sort of like, what's the passcode of the fascism?
Yeah.
Helio. And there's like
She's got her mask on.
she's the mask, the people come
Yeah.
in and all the rich people and all the power brokers, and she's there and you get a secret key, and it's not that. It's
Yeah,
and
no, they're all masks off now. They're all masks off. You know what we're into is fascism and jerking off outside of preschools and home because we're mad at Home Depot.
And Joe Walsh, former Republican, had said like there's this huge populist wave that Democrats have been unaware of like what voters are responding to and what they want. And we've got people like, populism is awful, populism is bad, and it's like, you say that, but people are really responding to that kind of beat of she is one of us. So you can kind of break down what is effective about Green and why that is effective to voters. But there's just there's a complete denial. It's just sort of like, well, why do these kids like the Beatles? It's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe it's just because they are four guys and they're wearing pants. So we'll get four guys who are wearing pants. It's like, oh, no, I mean, maybe there's more to it because your four guys are really embarrassing and not cool. So they just try to do this sort of thing and not getting like but it's terrifying. Like what next year will be with Green, like God knows what committee post she's going to be and what power she would have in a Republican. I am criticized for presuming that Republicans might take the House despite all polling data. That is also very
again, no more you can't do the secret. You can't just be like, I'm gonna say it out loud. And like, I'm a very superstitious person. Like there are certain things I will not say out loud without spitting. Despite being an atheist, we all have our things. But no, it's not like, oh, if you say it out loud, it's going to happen. That's not how that works. It's not like being in denial of shit has not prevented anything so far.
Well, yeah, they're talking about, well, there's still a chance that we can, we should work on that. And it's like, well, yeah, well, here's one of the big warning signs is that there's a latest poll. I was working on this for Monday. There's a latest poll where Kathy Hochul in New York, the governor there, is leading the crazy Trumpist by just 6 points.
Yeah.
So, sure, she might win, but okay, Cuomo was beating the Republican by 20 or 30 points. You know why that matters? Down ballot. That means that there were these swing districts that Cuomo carried. And of course, the Democrat also won. Ticket splitting is very rare. So there's like districts that a lot of Democrats are going to lose. And even if
there are some pretty wackadoo areas up here in Western New York. I'm not going to lie.
And that does seem depressing because to me, it's just like, even after they've grown in strength. So maybe they are angry just that we exist. Like, you tried to overthrow the election. You tried to do this. And I feel like there's a lot of Democrats who thought, oh, it's going to be smooth sailing. They've disqualified themselves. We might win in Tennessee or West Virginia now. But instead, it's like, no, we might lose Oregon. We're like within 5 points in New York. And if there was like a third party, definitely this person could win. And he's like far. If they talk about the, as you were saying, they never say the right's gone too far. Pennacchia and even Giuliani and Bloomberg, when they're at the mayor level, were always like, oh, well, we're Northeast Republicans. We don't mind what gays do as long as they're rich and not black. And we don't mind, we're pro-choice. But because that's how you get elected. But he's not. He's completely full-on Trumpist, anti-abortion, and that is now only 5 points away. Because you can be as extreme on these issues as you want, as long as you say, oh, there's crime. Someone getting out of their cab had to step on a homeless person and it broke their heel of their Louis Vuitton. And what's going on in this country, that homeless people exist. Don't raise my taxes or don't do anything about this, but I've seen a homeless person and it's terrible.
Yes.
So
isn't there some closet we can shove them all into?
I mean, you're going to have a plan for that, because Rollins are going to make them disappear. And I think it'll be like we saw with Giuliani. Everyone's claiming, oh, we love it now. We don't mind stop and frisk. Well, you don't. Right person. So it's going to be pretty brutal there. So you've seen how parts of New York can be pretty, as you were saying, extreme.
I mean, so like where I'm at right now is Rochester. We live in a place my parents live in a town called Brighton that is very like super liberal. But then you go that way and there's Pittsford, which is all like blonde ponytailed white Republicans. I mean, the women have blonde ponytails, the men wear polo shirts, that sort of look. And then you go way further in one direction and you get like this whole like area code. I'm not gonna, but it's just all like farm area, and a lot of there are a lot of sort of more extreme people in those areas, like in the more rural areas, and people really discount that. I mean, there's also, quite frankly, a lot of extremism in Buffalo, even and here. Like there was even when I was a teenager, our punk scene was getting over a whole issue with actual skinheads. It was before I was here, but people had to chase actual skinheads out of punk shows. That was an actual problem. That's why, they started, a lot of anti-racist action stuff here in order to, clear those people out. So it's not all oh, hey, literally everyone who lives in New York is liberal. It's it's the same as anywhere else. If you are in the city areas, people are more liberal, and if you go into the rural areas, is when people are usually more conservative.
But there's something when Cuomo was winning with 55% of the vote, and so clearly there's a law and again he used to run against more quote unquote moderate Republicans and would still win. And so now this Trumpist is gaining on a normal Democrat, because there's no there's not this stereotype of oh, because we don't have Carrie Lakes, right? We don't nominate a Walker. We don't have any Herschel Walkers. We have so we present the best candidates possible according to the rules of moderation and centrism, and then it'll be they're not centrist enough, but they still would lose. So it's disturbing, the extent of, maybe you're right, going back to what you were saying the time, that these are people who hate half the country or more so much they're willing to put fascists in office specifically because they're fascists.
Yes,
because they're going to hurt us. And
that is I have to say, Mark is not factually incorrect about that. Yes, they are putting these people in office to hurt us specifically because they are mad. The problem is justifying it, by saying you're doing all these things that I also think are bad.
Well, yeah, Maher doubled
Like,
down on
because
lies,
that's
like
his thing. Like,
exposing
he's like,
kids.
if you did the things I wanted you to do, these people would be nice to you, which is also bullshit, as
Oh
we
yeah, well,
know from
Maher's
the
lie about we're exposing kids to like all
yeah,
these kids are getting are trans classes and I hate whitey
yeah.
classes isn't true. And
They're being introduced to concepts that they're too young to understand. It's like, no, the kids aren't too young to understand them. Republicans are too stupid to understand them. Like, that is because they won't listen. Like, in order to learn, like they'd rather choose their own adventure and make up what they think is happening than find out what actually is.
well, yeah, and he make a thing of, people slog Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh, but I think it's a very narrow band, right? Like people who are very online on the left goes after those guys. But I think all of the right views Nicole Hannah-Jones as some horrible boogeyman. And Republicans do a very good job of demonizing those folks. I mean, also because no elected Democrat is going to, maybe few exceptions, maybe Swalwell, God knows what he's doing. He mixes it up with people, but no one is going after Ben Shapiro. But like Tucker Carlson has like clear on hate rallies on his
Yeah.
show. And I still say this, like, I don't care. Like, no Democrat should go on Fox, which airs this guy, like, or you should, in fact, be attacking Republicans for going on a show that's like a network of outright racist. I mean, there's no way Democrats would get away with going on a Farrakhan
Yeah.
broadcast or something. So,
I do go back and forth, personally on the whole, like, whether or not it's bad to go on Fox thing. And I'm actually, just not personally sure where I stand on it, because a part of me is kind of like, okay, well, if you just completely avoid this entirely, then, you're just seeding that
oh, sure.
audience, like,
I
I
don't
don't.
I don't know if how big their audience is comparative to all voters. I think that most voters passively might be aware of Fox. Like definitely in the South, in my father's frustration, you can go anywhere without it being on a
Yeah.
television restaurant or whatever. But I think we can do more with reaching out with groups that we tend to show up a few weeks before the election to say, hey, vote for us, specifically Latinos, Black voters, young people of all races. Like we should be focusing specifically on them. The question is how persuadable someone is who watches Tucker Carlson regularly. I don't know if you would think that, again, someone who listens to Louis Farrakhan religiously, would you really think that this is someone who, you just need to have a nice pro-Israel voice to come on and say something?
I don't think it necessarily would have to, like, as far as like Farrakhan goes, I don't think you would necessarily have to be like, anti-Palestine, pro-Israel in order to, like, get someone to be like, hey, I now realize that anti-Semitism is bad. Like, I don't think that that's an either or kind of situation. I think that you can, say, like many people, like many Jewish people, I support a free Palestine and not a raging anti-Semite. I like to think I am one of those people.
That's become of course, it's become very controversial. Even after you saw where Ben Shapiro defended Trump for his Jewish people are stupid if they don't for not supporting me in Israel enough, and he's like, he's right. So it's just like, well,
yeah,
you're embracing a sort of dual loyalty thing.
Here's the thing. I actually think that people are way more malleable than we give them. I don't want to say like give them credit for, because I don't know if it's necessarily like it's a credit type thing. I think that people are a lot more malleable than we like to assume. I think it's very easy to assume that people, like, just are the way they are, and, they're going to be like that forever. However, what I've noticed that people, like, every once in a while they'll get hooked on like one particular idea and then follow that idea to its logical conclusion. And sometimes if if they get that like one idea, or if that one sort of thing like cracks through where they're at, that
yeah,
things can eventually like change their view. I do think that people can change, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
I am. That's our philosophical differences. I'm more determinist than you. But I do. It's interesting because I think I have my own bias with Carlson and even Hannity to a degree, or Ingram, because growing up, I grew up around people who listened to Limbaugh. I probably listened to him, and sure, because he was on the radio all the time. And as you could, from a bullying standpoint, you could say as a Brock, he's like a very, especially 30 years ago. So right wing Howard Stern. Okay, he's funny, even though it's bully. Later, you had to present, here's why this isn't funny, right? Or here's why this hurts other people's feelings. But there's a similar with a lot of comedy, a lot of stuff of where, okay, you're listening to this not make you necessarily a bad person. You're finding it funny doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, and so forth. But Carlson's not particularly. I don't even know where he's going for a joke. He's not
funny. He's just like a weird whiny child.
It's just vitriol and hate. And if you come back to that, it just seems like you must be responding to the vitriol and the hate. How do we sort of like getting someone off snuff?
I do think that people, I don't know. I think that we like to think that people are very like stated in their views because we, so like you and I have spent a lot of time thinking about what we think as humans. We assume that other people have also done this. I think a lot of the time they haven't. I also think that a lot of these people are generally like all they know about what the left believes is what they're told the left believes by Tucker Carlson and these other people. So they have like no actual idea what we actually believe. They've just made it up themselves out of like their own personal fears and terrors. It bears little to no resemblance to reality. And so I do think that, on occasion, breaking through that like thick layer of ignorance can help. I don't know. I do think that people are so much more malleable than like they don't really think that deeply on things. We think that people are thinking as deeply on things as we are all the time because you and I are both neurotic.
When I was like, I feel, and I've gotten pushback for this. It's like, I think the narrative that a lot of people have that, if Sanders were to come and speak, oh my God, he can't come to Wisconsin and we'll lose all the swing, he's going to alienate because he's a socialist and all this. And it's like, I don't think that people are that check the box. I think he just reads as a old Jewish guy. And some people hate that, but a lot of people are like, just he's an old guy, he's an old cranky guy. And a lot of people like that. I think even working class who even on paper might be like, oh, these are all the things I might not like about his policies. And I think the sense that politics are personal is freaky to people, right? So there was like, well, how could Fetterman be more popular than Lamb? Because Fetterman was sort of, he liked Sanders. It's like, well, no, this is how he presents versus how Lamb presents. And people are just ultimately, it's like, do I trust this person? Do I like this person? So I think that becomes, and there's no science to it. We're almost at time. Today also is the end of Jodie Whittaker's run on today's Sunday on Doctor Who. David Tennant will be coming back as we don't know what, but there'll be 3 specials with new returning showrunner Russell T Davies next year, and I can't be more delighted. Neil Patrick Harris is playing a potential villain on the series. He's delightful, so I'm very excited. After a perhaps not, it's unfortunate. I felt like they Whittaker is such a lovely, charming woman, and
she deserved better. She really did. She deserved better show running and writing altogether. That is just so disappointing to me because I do like, I love her. I love Doctor Who. I think that she was screwed.
Yes, I felt like I'd written something about this, I was gonna be posting today, of like how they sort of, as a deliberate attempt of not having her ever express connection with her companions, which doesn't, I mean, narratively, that's really
Yeah.
hard. I mean, some of the best episodes come from the deep. Even Capaldi has a wonderful, it's almost like an old
Yeah.
married couple. And then when he's literally with River Song, that's one of the better episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
Him and the Master were wonderful, as played by the lovely Michelle Gomez. So there's so much you could do that was not done, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah. It felt like her, you know, like they were just like people who were randomly along for the ride, and that, you know, sort of
not quite what is good to be these days. So,
yeah.
well, thank you so much, Robyn, for doing this pre-record, and I will now head off to my own adventures. I thank you everyone for joining us. Please like, share, subscribe.
Send us money.
And send us money. Thank you. Goodbye.